Hey guys, Big Ed here with RB Bass. We're going to break down what happened at the Future Pro Tour, show you some of the baits I used, show you the rods, the reels, how we kind of broke it down, how I went about going out pre-fishing. A lot of the baits kind of switched up from Monday all the way to Saturday, Sunday. A little bit about Oroville, a little bit about Bullard's Bar. Be able to touch some of it and hopefully get you some good ideas for the next time we kind of have some of these conditions come up, or just the next time you go out and take a trip out there to one of these lakes and try things out. So stick with me here. We're going to run down some stuff and we'll see you in just a bit. Well, hey, we're going to break some of this down a little bit. Some of the products we use, some of the things I did to pre-fish, how I broke down Oroville. We had a lot of rain coming in, as everybody knows pretty well, and we had a lot of rising water. You know, that lake Oroville was coming up 4, 5, 6, 8 feet a day, kind of depending on how much rain we were getting and what day it was. So it was coming up a lot, and one of the things that I really focused on when I went out Monday to pre-fish was trying to find different areas that, you know, where water was coming in and seeing what was going to be biting. Monday was a little different. The storm was kind of blowing out. A lot of the water had been hit pretty good by that Wild West tour that had been in there. So some of the areas I fished were maybe a little pressured. I fished a lot of the North Fork. I fished up in the waterfalls, fished up in some of the darker, dirtier water. And I was getting fish. A lot of them were smaller fish, probably in the pound and a quarter range, which, you know, wasn't really going to get me anything more than about 6.5, 7 pounds. So I knew that really wasn't what I was shooting for. But one of the baits that really helped me find a lot of fish and turned me on to one of the bites that I overall did was this little I'm a Flint right here. This color, it's a little darker color. It was a little, had a little more kind of match the darker water. You know, they could see it a little better. I know it's kind of got some sides here, but it really did a great job. It doesn't dive very deep, which was one of the keys to what I was doing. Is I was throwing everything pretty shallow. I knew that the bait fish was going to move up, it was going to get against the shore, and it was going to start, you know, they were going to start, so the bass were going to start eating on it. I've been on these bites before on Oroville where, you know, everything's got to be in 2-3 feet of water. Well, this one was even a little shallower than that. A lot of what I found on Monday was really, really shallow, like 2, maybe 3 inches of water is where you can just start. And this little I'm a Flint with this short bill on it was really doing a great job for helping me search. Now, I wasn't catching big fish with it, unfortunately, and I don't really know if I, you know, say that's the bait or if it was the just the conditions. I tend to believe it was more the conditions. So this bait was a great little search bait when I first started. So it caught a lot of fish, and I moved from there. One of the other baits I of course used because it's Oroville was this you know, half ounce jig. So this is an LBS jig. This is one of the ones I used. This is called Scarecrow, and I just used a little green trailer on it. I was getting, again, this color is a great color. It's got some brown in it. It's got some tan to it, so it looks a lot like this. It's a darker color. Again, in the darker water that I was looking for on Monday, I was throwing this is a football head, half ounce. I was throwing it on 30-pound Power Pro on my Loomis rod here. And this was, you know, this was a bait that I was catching fish with it. They were still, again, a lot of short fish, and they weren't really eating it as well as I thought they should be. This time of year, you can get a lot of fish on jigs. This just wasn't one of them. You know, this is one of the days that I was doing that. I probably picked up 2 fish on here, and both of them were 1.5 pound, 1.25 pounds. You know, nothing I was really looking for. So I was looking for those 2-pound fish. So I threw this for probably about an hour and a half in the morning, and then again towards the afternoon as I got ready to leave, I threw it for another half hour or so. I kind of put some time into it. It really didn't produce as much as I wanted it to. The jig bite just didn't seem to be open, but it was there, and it was something you had to do. On Monday, the other thing that I really kind of looked at was a drop shot. I threw I threw my favorite little drop shot here, Margarita Mutilator, dark color again, muddier water, stained water. You want something they can see. This is the MM3. I use the Fat Worms. I like the way they, way they offer a little bit bigger bait, a little bigger size, so hopefully a better fish is going to eat it. This bait did catch me some fish. Again, I just wasn't finding any good size. I think I ended up on Monday with like 9.5 pounds, which, was about average on the Wild West Trail, but I really wasn't looking for average. I needed to get, top 15 just to make the cut, so I needed those bigger fish. Tuesday, I took off because the sun came out. So I figured, well, if the sun's coming out, or, it didn't come out great, but it came out a little bit, on Tuesday and lightened up. So I thought, well, I'm not going to fish in that, so I don't want to pre-fish in it either. So I came back on Wednesday. Wednesday I went out and I left the North Fork, came back over, and I decided I was going to fish the middle, fished up the middle, fished the middle basin, and I actually got lucky and found a fish that had turned around and blow up on some bait fish. Just fishing, I was fishing a little waterfall inlet, some water inlet. I was fishing some areas, and I seen this fish just bust right next to a big rock pile. So I figured, well, if they're eating shad, they're eating shad. So I turned around and I picked up what would ultimately be the bait that got me, up into contention at Oroville, and that's this River to Sea Bling. This bait has actually been just amazing for me in a lot of different areas, but at Oroville this year, it really did a great job. I caught a ton of fish. What I found was I was throwing this bait. The fish busted over about 2, maybe 3 feet of water, so I knew they were working shallow. But again, knowing that they're working shallow is one thing, and catching them shallow is another thing. This bait had to be running parallel to the bank, and it had to be in, 3-4 inches of water. If you weren't running it right on the bank, they weren't eating it. I could move it out a foot off the bank, and that was about as far as I could get. If I got it any further out, it just start over, reel it back in quick, throw it back out, because you just weren't going to get that bite. And it proved itself time and time again that was the pattern. So stay in that shallow water, stay up there tight. Unfortunately for my partner, it wasn't a great issue, because he couldn't on tournament day. He couldn't really fish with me. I hadn't, he was throwing other baits, I was throwing this bait, and it really turned out good. I went down the bank on pre-fish day, which was that was Wednesday, and on Wednesday I put 12.6 in the boat. I scaled them out, and this is what I came up. I came up with 12.6. So. And I only went down maybe 100, 120 yard stretch of bank, and this was in the Middle Fork. So it was really productive, and I knew that. So I put the bait away, didn't pick it back up, just decided that, hey, yeah, I'm going to do this. Now on tournament day, the first tournament day, and on practice, I didn't throw this with any kind of a trailer. They were eating it so well, I didn't want anything getting in the way. And they were just crushing it. So I didn't even use it. I didn't use a trailer hook. I didn't use a trailer. Nothing. It was just straight bling. I mean, everything you had. This one has a gold blade up here, willow leaf, and a silver one lower. So this was chartreuse and white, just a little stained water. So this seemed to really be doing it. And this was the bait that I found on Wednesday that really put some good weight together, and I was feeling pretty positive about what was going to happen. One of the other baits, as I put that down, I kind of threw this River to Sea, the S-Waver. The S-Waver is one of those baits that you know that it can catch a big fish. I mean, it's caught records and lake records and big fish all over the place, and it's one of those baits that I thought, well, if I'm catching some of these fish, and I was catching decent fish on the Bling, I thought, well, I'm going to throw this around a little bit. I never did get a good fish on the S-Waver at Oroville. No, I don't even remember getting a fish at Oroville up there on it. It just didn't seem, it seemed a little too big. Maybe it was just not what they were looking at. One of the things is, I think this is a bait that you fish a little slower. I tried speeding it up, but it just, it lost some of its action, lost some of its appeal that I like to it, and I wasn't getting fish on it. So I kept it tied on because I know what it can do. So with this bait, I just said, well, I'll keep it tied on, and if I throw it and I get a good fish, great. It's a good bonus fish. So that's kind of how I ran with that. One of the other baits that I decided to throw was the, of course, the A-rig, but the River to Sea version, which is the Bumbershoot. I modified it a little bit. I put some bigger blades on, and I matched those with, the fish how they went. This one I rigged with this is the Rig Walker, so little bait that goes on it. It's a good bait. I like throwing these individually also, and I did at this tournament. Never did get any quality fish on it. I got some fish, but they weren't anything big. And then I also throw as my dummies. A lot of times I just throw these, which are the Havoc baits, the grass pigs. Now, a lot of times I throw these as not the dummies. I'll throw these with the hooks in them, just because they really come and swim very well. This bait is it's one of my favorites. I actually caught one of my 11 pounder on just 5 of these on there with 2 dummies and two regulars. So I know that this bait will catch a lot of good fish, and it's just got that perfect profile. But for Oroville, it's not. It's a little bit bigger than what I think they were looking for, but. I don't know. I tried it anyways. I got a couple fish on Monday. I actually got fish on this rig, but I never did get them after that. On Wednesday, Thursday, I kind of switched away from this. It wasn't my confidence bait, so I switched away from it. I did get some in pre-fish, but it's a bait that you got to keep this tied on. This is something you have to keep tied on. When you're out there this time of year, you can get a big A-rig bite. Turn game changer. And I wish maybe I should have downsized, maybe gone with something a little bit smaller, maybe change these blades back to smaller ones, put some smaller profile on here, and maybe I would have got some of those fish. But, I went with what I had, and that bling was doing it. And of course, the other bait that was really working out there in pre-fish was the Senko. Can't go wrong with the Gary Yamamoto Senko. This also came into play on bullards. Unfortunately, it didn't catch me the ones I wanted at bullards, but at Oroville, I was catching a lot of fish on this. One of the big things with this was to throw it with what I didn't put it here, but anyway, is to throw it with the double wacky hook. I threw the biggest thing for me was putting that double wacky hook on there, pegging it, putting a little weight inside the head, throwing it out, letting it sit there, and just dead stick it. Now this double wacky hook, this is it here. This one's got a little bit of a weed guard on it, so it's pretty nice. This one's a little messed up. It's kind of been sitting in the bottom of the box. But this is how I rigged it. I put a weight in, just a weightless, and then this one I put a weight in the head, threw it out, and just let it sit there, and then. When they hit this bait, a lot of times the fish will, they come up, especially spotted bass, they come up and they'll grab it short, and then they get up on the hook. If you just let it dead stick, let it sit there, pick it up, it would just start swimming away. And that's when you knew you had your fish on there. But if I twitched it, twigged it, anything, they really weren't interested in it. So this ended up being a bait that I didn't really do much with after pre-fish. It worked really well in pre-fish, but it still didn't get me the size I was looking for. It was getting me 1.25 pound, 1.5 pound fish, which were kind of everywhere. So, anyways, that bait wasn't as big a factor as I was hoping it was going to be, but it ended up being a little bit of a factor. Now we go on to Thursday, and on Thursday, when I went back out, I decided, if that spinnerbait's working that well, there's got to be a bite for topwater. This time of year, a lot of people don't think about topwater, but if you've got shallow fish and you got bait running up there, topwater could work. I chose the River to Sea Rover. This is actually an older version, darker sides. This one had a little chartreuse on it, and it's almost worn off now, but had a little chartreuse side to it, and that chartreuse seemed to be a real big key to the flash that they wanted. They wanted that little color to it. They wanted that little bit on there. And every time I got on Thursday, I started off with this, and I went back up to the north. I decided, well, I'm going to see the north. I'm going to look at it and see what's going on. And boom, I went through and got 11.4, 11.8, something like that on this bait right here. I threw nothing but this bait on Thursday. I wanted to see if it was working, and by gosh, it was working. I felt really strong that I had 2 solid baits in the Rover and the Bling that I could go out and catch myself 11 to 12 pounds, which I knew would put me in contention for, the day 3 cut. So, or the day 2 cut, but the day, to go to day 3. These 2 baits were the baits that I started off on Saturday or on Friday when we started. This was day 1. These were the 2 rods that I had on the deck, and I had nothing else on the deck. So I had a ton of confidence in it, and I went out and we did okay. We had 955 on Thursday or on Friday. So this bite died a little bit, and I think it died a little bit just because of the weather pattern changing, and we got more rain and a little more wind. So this got pushed off, and it still worked. I got 2 of the fish we brought in came on the Rover, but the other fish all came on spinner baits, and I culled with the spinner bait, the Bling, and this is the one I was throwing it on right here. This Veritas rod, Curado reel, older, Bantam Curado reel still works great, but this Veritas rod right here, this is the actual rig I used on Saturday. It was, except for the trailer, this trailer wasn't on there. I actually put that trailer on Saturday. I put the trailer on Friday. I didn't put the trailer on. So great little bait. I love the Bling. I'm gonna invest in this company. I think this River to Sea has just absolutely been an amazing company, and it's just caught me a ton of fish. Just this bait just caught me a ton of fish this weekend. So we went out, and like I said, we caught 955 on the first day, putting us in 21st place. So it was a tough day for everybody out there. It wasn't, there was a couple people that came in with some 15-pound bags, 13-pound bags. Good weight, and that's a great weight. And I give them credit. That was a great way to start the day. I wish I could have been there, and in that level, but 21st out of 93, we weren't feeling too bad. We felt, hey, we can make this push. We did it last year. We can do it this year. Came back out, and on Saturday we got back out there, and we decided to go south. The waterfalls on Monday had produced for me a little bit, but not as much as I wanted them to. So we went back out on Thursday, changed up a little bit. I didn't have a ton of confidence in in the pattern that I had. I didn't have a ton of confidence in the pattern that I had going on Friday, really holding out. The way that the fish had turned around a little bit, and the way they were biting, they had slowed down quite a bit. So I thought, well, we discussed it, and we went back up to the waterfalls and looked for some darker water, and we took the Bling back out and absolutely crushed them. The River to Sea Bling now we changed it up a little bit because the water was dingier, so we wanted a little bulkier bait. We wanted something, it had the color, but it didn't have the bulk that we were looking for. It didn't have the size that we were kind of wanting to throw in that, to give them a bigger profile. So what we ended up doing was putting this Optimum bait on it. We use this trailer right here. There was a key. I tried a speed shad from one of the speed shads from Bass Pro Shop, and it was too bulky. It didn't cut down and allow the bait to fall as quick as the size of this bait right here. The tail action on this was perfect. You could slow roll this bait, and that was the key on Saturday was to slow roll that bait. We threw it up in the waterfall and just almost dead stick it. The waterfall we fished was 7 feet deep underneath, and you'd throw it up as far as you could into the waterfall and just barely turn those, barely turn those blades. On Friday, it was more of a medium retrieve. I was fishing a little clearer water. There wasn't much chocolatey to it, anything like that. So we were throwing that bait at a medium pace, and we were just throwing it right up on the bank. This time we were throwing it more into the waterfall, letting it die, and then just starting to crank and just barely turn those blades. And I mean just barely, just doop, doop. As long as they were turning, that's all you cared about. With this little Optimum bait on there, it really did a great job of just allowing it to have the bulk, but not giving it so much that it kept it from falling at a pretty good rate. Because they wanted it down lower, but they didn't necessarily want it, they didn't want it so big and so bulky and so slow. So you throw it out and just kind of barely turn those hooks, and this was giving it all the action you needed. This bait turned out to be one of the key baits that we did, because this was the exact rig that we were throwing, and it just, you can see it's not much to it, but this tail action right here, every time we threw that out there, and we loaded the boat within 20 minutes, we had our live wells full. In 20 minutes, we had our 5 fish in, and we were starting to cull. We culled our last fish at 9:30. Right around 9:30, we culled our last fish that we culled for the entire day. We ended up with 1171 for 1116 for day 2, giving us 2071. So almost 21 pounds. One of the other baits that was really working for us, or started working for us on day 2, was throwing this little jackal bait right here. It's another small little bait, 4-inch, 3/8, something like that. And this bait was just put it on a P head. We had an LBS tackle P head, throwing this thing on there and throwing it up into the waterfall, and just slow swimming this back to just barely keeping it up, so that you didn't want it bouncing off the rocks or anything, but you wanted it probably about 5 feet of water, I guess 4 or 5 feet of water, and throwing this bait was actually we kind of ran into it on accident. I actually had one of these Dream Shots on a P head. I was just bouncing it off the bottom, seeing if I could get a little fish. And I had it in the purple, the purple color, but this is the KVD Perfect Dream Shot, Perfect by the coffee scent. This is one of my favorite baits right here. This is just absolutely fun little bait, especially at Shasta and anywhere there's a goby. This is a great bait, great bait. So one of the things is we were throwing this. Like I said, we started throwing this. So I was throwing that Dream Shot. As I was swimming it back, boom, I got picked up by a fish. You're kind of going, how do you pattern that? So I threw it back out, swam it back, boom, got another fish. It's like, wow, there's something to it. So I threw that Dream Shot for a while, and it seemed like after I got a couple fish on it, they turned off of it. It didn't have enough action, I don't think, and I couldn't fish it slow enough because it was there was nothing giving any kind of resistance to it. So we pulled out these little jackal baits, and started throwing those around, and did a good job with those. I ended up putting it using it as a trailer on my spinner bait, and got some fish on that too. So it had enough of an action. I think the Optima bait was definitely the bait that had the best action, the best size and profile to it. This one, actually, you can't see it on the screen, I'm sure, but this thing is chewed up. And the nice thing was we actually only had to use one on that. We ended up using the other ones, just trying to swim them on P heads and things like that, and catching fish. But most of our fish on both day 1 and day 2 came on the spinner bait. The Bling, again, just absolutely tore them up. So then we moved, so that moved us up. We got 2071, and we got moved up. We made the top 15. We ended up in, the book showed us at 8. We actually, there was some stuff out of the line, and we made it to 10th. So we made it to 10th place. We were still 5 places up. We had 2071. We were feeling pretty good. Bullard's Bar can be a really big, it can be a game changer. And one of the things that, you go into it going, well, what do you, how do you go in there thinking, how do you fish Bullard's Bar? Well, you've always heard so many things about the swim baits and all that. But honestly, the way that we ended up fishing it, and the way that I know that it was won on, and the way that it was, was fished, was with a couple baits. Most guys were throwing one of two things, either the Yamamoto Senko, and they were rigging it with the same way I was rigging it, either with it on a shaky head. I shaky headed it. Unfortunately, I didn't get the fish. I probably should have gone to a little bit bigger size. I should have gone to the 6. I kept throwing the 5-inch. I just, I felt like maybe that 5-inch was going to be the different size. A lot of people throw big baits up there. And the other one was the Roboworms. The Roboworm and the Oxblood was the guys who ended up winning it. Shane Pearson and my other RB guy, Austin Wilson. They, that's what they ended up winning on, was a shaky head with a big 7-inch Oxblood oxblood robo worm on there. So I know they worked. I fished a bunch of the different areas. I actually fished on water that they caught some of their fish on, or they caught one of their fish on, and I didn't do squat on it, but we got a couple small fish. But the way to go up and attack Bullard's Bar is to go out and just be confident that those are spotted bass. And it may seem like we didn't, you're fishing for these giant fish, these 8-pound, 9-pounders and all that, but they're coming on their spots. I mean, they eat what every other spot eats. So you go out after them with drop shots, you go out after them with shaky heads, you go out after them with Senkos. They'll eat the swim baits, they'll eat the hula grubs, and that's kind of what I went with hula grubs, the Senko, and the robo worm. That was how we did it. Day three of the tournament was a miserable day out there. It was rainy, it was wet, it was colder, and you had to persevere. Every boat that fished out there deserves respect, because I'll tell you what, it was one of the toughest tournaments I think I've seen for these guys to go through. Pre-fish and then fishing, and just the weather. The weather was just cold and wet and rainy the whole time. There was no let up. I mean, just none whatsoever. And we all went out. We did our jobs and did what we could do. So, that's basically how I broke it down. I'm gonna, I'd like to tell you a couple things that really helped when you're out there beating around in some of these boats and you're running across the lakes and the wind's bad and everything else. Having your rods up on the deck it's an option. It's not the best option for me. I always like to put my rods away when I'm going to make some big runs and things like that. I like to throw them in there. And one of the quickest, fastest, easiest ways to do that are with these rod gloves. I let's see, where's my other ones? The rod gloves are by far the best things that have happened to me for when I run an older boat. I have an older Nitro, but I don't have the integrated locker systems and all that. And I know that guys that are running integrated locker systems love these things too. But when you're out there and these things are beating around and your rods are in there getting smashed and banged up and everything else, having a rod glove on your rods in those lockers makes it so easy. When I pull up to that spot, I reach down, grab the bait that I want. I grab the bait that I want, I grab the rod that I want, I slide it out of the tube, I slide it out of the rod sock, and off I go. Or the rod glove, and off I go. The other thing that really helps is, especially if you're throwing, this river to CS waiver, or you're throwing, everybody knows how these IMA flits and rip baits in general get hooks in everything. Well, this right here, Rod Glove makes these, and one of the things that I really love is this little deal right here. It's a little bait, you just wrap it around, Velcro straps, bam, bam. It goes on just about every bait. You just find the one that fits the size bait you want. That fits right in there. Put it on there. It covers up the hooks, keeps everything from getting all messed up. That's called a bait glove. Rod Glove makes those, and they are amazing. I've every rod that I have a treble hook on gets one of those from now on. I've had them. I've had them on there. I've run them. I forgot about putting them on there. The other thing is that they really do keep, one thing nice and, good and bad about the rod gloves are the fact that, they're a mesh, and, that those hooks get in them. Well, if you run those bait gloves on there, they don't. They stay out of there, and that's one of the big keys. The other out there was having really solid rain gear. I actually went with the Bass Pro Shops Pro Qualifier stuff. I bought this quite a few years ago. Still love it. It still works pretty good. After I was out for 6 days. After 6 days of being on the water, the Gore-Tex gave up a little bit. Day 5 was a little wetter than day 4, and or day 3 of the tournament, I was, everybody. I don't remember anybody out there not being wet. So it was, everybody said the same thing. It's like, rain gear, whatever. It was just giving up. So, it's good stuff. Keep it dry, take care of it, and have quality rain gear. Especially if you're going to fish in this kind of weather. This tournament turned out to be one of my favorite tournaments that I think we've fished in a long time. Clear Lake was fun last year. There were some big fish. It was, that's always a great tournament. But I think for me, I like tough tournaments. I think they're just a lot more fun. You got to go out there and grind and grind and grind, and you learn. I think you learn a lot about how to fish. I think you learn about yourself. I think you learn about your partners. I think you learn about the lakes. When you go out and you have a tough tournament, it's just that. It's a tough tournament, and when you can grow from it, and you can produce good fish, you can get quality fish, you can do right by yourself and get up in the standings. I think there's nothing better. I think it just teaches you. This tournament happens to be called the Future Pro Tournament, and I'll tell you what, if you talk to any tournament guy out there, we all love it when the bite's open and every bait you throw works, and you catch the fish you can catch. But I don't know any angler out there that won't tell you when they have a tough tournament out, there's a tough water, and they come out and they still do well, they still catch the fish that they're going to catch. They just feel amazing, just flat out amazing. And so with this tournament being the way it was, most of the guys up on Bullards, only ended up catching, I think the most caught was 4, and then I think everybody else had 2 or 3. A lot, I think there was a few ones, and but it is what it is. It was a tough tournament. Orville was a tough tournament. There was a lot of just average catches in there, and you had to have that solid bag of over 10 pounds, both days. I knew going in that it was going to take 10 pounds a day to get you in the cut, and it did. We ended up having almost 21. It was 10.71, but it was still tough. It was still a good tournament to fish, and I give a lot of thanks to companies like IMA and like River to Sea for making a baits that are quality, that I can really depend on when I'm out there on the water. These baits are, I can't. You can't do it without quality. If you don't have baits that can produce, why even out there? These guys, River to Sea has been producing for me for years now. The Bling has absolutely 100% become one of my super confidence baits. I've fished a lot of spinner baits in my day, and the way this thing's beat to snot because it's just been fish and rock and everything else. And I'm going to have an order of these baits coming real soon. But this bait right here, the way this skirt flows, the way that it stays, the action I can impart on it. This bait is a flat out amazing bait, and it's done a great job for me. And I will definitely be catching a lot of fish this year on it, and I'll be catching a lot of fish in the future on them. The Rover is another one of those baits that I have a ton of confidence in. It's got the right walking action. It's got the right everything that you need to really catch those fish. The S-Waver, the Bummershoot. This thing I've caught tons and tons of fish on this. You can make some modifications with it. It's a nice bait. It's their A-rig version, and you can make a ton of different versions of it. You can change up what you need to change up. You can do what you got to do. So it's really versatile. I like the fact that it drops and breaks down. This one is all you do is unscrew it, screw it back in, and it flares it out. When you unscrew it, it drops back down. And one of the things that I really did is the bait glove makes a really big size, and you can take this and you can wrap this whole thing in a bait glove, and it's just keeps it super secure. I've seen all the different way, the Gatorade bottles and the different wraps, but this thing, if you take one of those big bait gloves, get the extra large size bait glove, and put this on there and put this inside of it. I keep them like this in the garage here. I keep them like this everywhere. I just happen to keep them locked down and they're ready to go. Put them in scent or whatever you need to do. So that's River to Sea, and that's some of the stuff that I used. And I hope that next time you go out, you get some fishing and you're out there, you can use some of this information. It's going to get better from here. They're going to start spawning soon. You know, most every spot we caught had a big belly on it. You know, few didn't, but most of them did. All the ones up at Bullard's Bar were giant bellies on them. Oh, of course, except the 2 I caught, which were, you know, 2 fish for £1.79. So, right there, that tells you I didn't have a very good day on Bullard's. But, you know, it's one of those things that tough days are tough days, and I, you know, I wish I'd have done better. I fished a lot of the same water. I fished the water that I've caught in, you know, 6, 7, 8 pounders on, and so I know they're there. I know how to catch them. You know, tough days are tough days, and I had one. So again, just about everything we threw, all our top water was thrown on braid. Our spinner baits were all thrown on mono. I always throw my spinner baits on mono. I like having stretch in those baits. I know the fish can throw them, especially, you know, you start getting in smallmouth and spots. They come up, and when they want to jump, they throw that bait fairly easy. So I throw it on mono. It seemed to not lose as many fish on it. My jigs, everything was thrown on braid. Other than that, my drop shots are all braid with a. I actually go to Yo-Zuri Hybrid now and use that line. I like it a lot. So that's kind of how I broke down, and that's kind of what we did. So again, I hope this helps. I hope you guys enjoy it, and thanks for watching. Come back anytime, and I'll be having more videos coming up soon. All right, thanks a bunch.